Folks, we're learning about ourselves. Chassidus is amazing because we're, as opposed to learning about ancient history or the sleeping habits of the North Sea clam, when you learn Chassidus, you're learning about yourself. We're in the middle of a mimer, which is about the power of clothing, the power of our wardrobe to transform our inside, not only in a superficial perception, but in an essential transformation.
It's so funny. I'm buying a suit right now.
You think it's by mistake? It's meant to be.
It's so weird.
Today we're going to learn a principle which explains a lot of the idiosyncrasies, the seeming idiosyncrasies of Judaism, and teaches us volumes about ourselves and our spiritual tools to self-mastery. We're learning this discourse, Velo Yikanef Moirecho, and your teachers shall no longer be concealed. This is a verse from Isaiah. It's a discourse that the Rabbi delivered in 1960 on Shabbos Chol HaMoed Sukkot. I believe this is part 3 of that section of the seminar. And today's Torah study, by the way, is dedicated, is generously sponsored by Stephanie and Jay Marmer in honor of Stephanie's Hebrew birthday, which was yesterday, the first of Adar 2. Her English birthday was last Monday. Sarah Basvar Shleib, may you experience blessing and success in the merit of today's Torah study. Thank you very much. So, we're learning today about, we're in the middle of this discourse, a game-changing discourse that the Rebbe taught in 1960 about the power of our clothing to transform us. We're coming up to Purim, the kids love to dress up. Kids love to dress up. You know why they love to dress up? Because when they dress like a fireman, they feel like a fireman. And last night my daughter was prancing around the house in an Arabian Nights kind of, I don't know, sort of interesting robe. And she felt different. She felt great because your clothing makes you feel differently. Now, if that's true of our physical wardrobe, how much more is it true of our spiritual wardrobe? When you focus your garments of your soul, your spiritual wardrobe, when you're mindful about the clothing of your spiritual wardrobe, that is going to change you as well. What are the clothing of your spiritual wardrobe? We've spoken about this many times. It is TSA, thought, speech, and action. Your thoughts is a garment. Your speech is a garment of your soul, and your actions is a garment of your soul. And when you understand that they are garments, what difference does it make that it's a garment? When you understand that it's something that is a garment, you understand two things. Number one, you can take it off when you want. You don't have to do what your mother did. Just because your mother might have been insulting and dismissive to Jewish spirituality, it doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing. You're not a prisoner. It's like a garment. You can take it off and you can put it back on, and you can take it off and put something else on.
I want to be just like my mother.
Fantastic. It's good. So you want to be just like your mother, which means just because you're not like your mother right now, doesn't mean you can't be like your mother. You can make a choice and say, my mother wore that garment. I'm going to wear that garment. She verbalized, she spoke with sensitivity about certain topics. I will do the same. And this is what the Alter Rebbe tells us in this discourse that we're learning in 1960, quoted by the Rebbe, of course, that the Rebbe was saying, that the Alter Rebbe had said, that even a fool can speak words of wisdom. And even a nasty person can act with acts of kindness, and they will change. They will become, in the first case, wise, not just in perception, but actually wise. And they will become kind, not only in perception, but essentially they'll become kind. Now, how does this idea manifest in our tradition? So let's take a look at this idea. I'm going to turn your attention now to a mitzvah. Mitzvah in the Torah. Mitzvah which seems to have nothing to do with anything. It's the mitzvah of the Passover offering. I'm reading from the Sefer HaChinuch, the book of education, which was written by an unknown author in the 13th century approx. And what he does is, this guy wrote this book as a bar mitzvah gift for his son. He went through every mitzvah in the Torah, and he explained the what, why, when, where, how of each mitzvah. Pretty cool.
Don't know his name?
We don't know his name. We think it's maybe Rabbi Aaron Halevi of Barcelona, but we don't really know. You know, listen, in 700 years, you can forget this kind of stuff, you know? Okay. Now, what I'm going to take your attention to is a mitzvah, which we don't actually do today. It's the mitzvah of the breaking of the bone of the Passover offering. So when it comes to Passover, you're supposed to eat the Passover offering, right? The Korban Pesach. In biblical times, what would happen is on the 14th of Nisan, you'd go to the temple with your lamb or sheep, and you'd offer it on the 14th in the temple. And that night, you would gather with your family and your friends in special groups, predetermined groups, and you would then eat it at the Passover Seder. And you make sure to finish every morsel of meat before midnight. And you were not allowed to break a bone in the Passover offering. You were not allowed to break a bone. Okay? Now, let's see, what is the significance of the seemingly irrelevant mitzvah, which seems incredibly technical, like, big deal. What would happen if you broke a bone in the sheep? It's already dead. I don't think it's going to feel anything. You're eating the flesh. What's going to happen? Comes the Sefer HaChinuch, and he gives us an amazing insight. So let's go into it. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly today just to understand what's going on here. So we're commanded not to break any of the bones of the Passover offering, as it's stated in Exodus, and you shall not break a bone in it, right? It says in the original verse in Exodus, in one house shall it be eaten. You shall not remove any of the meat from the house outside, and you shall not break a bone in it. This is a biblical commandment. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs. You're not inspired, are you?
Yeah. I would think there are bigger things. And
that's exactly my point. That's exactly my. Seems a little underwhelming. Yeah. God comes down from Mount Sinai and he says, "Guys, okay, this is news flash. Here is what God Almighty has decided to share with mankind. The message is: don't pick a bone. What? Don't pick a what?
Don't break a bone.
Don't break a bone." And you're like, "Really? That's it? That's it?" And the answer is no. That's not it. There's more to it. It's like a hyperlink. You know what a hyperlink is?
Yeah.
When you're reading the internet and there's like a little something and you click on it and you open that little link and it goes into like a whole world. That's what Torah is. Every little word in Torah is a hyperlink. It opens up a new horizon that you didn't even knew existed. Right? Don't break a bone. Let's see what happens. So we're going down in the rabbit hole right now. Here it is. What is the underlying purpose of this mitzvah? Says the Sefer HaChinuch is in order to thereby recall the miracles performed for us by God in Egypt in the time of the Exodus, as we have written with regard to the other mitzvahs of Pesach. Now, already this is very interesting because, we're living in times right now where we're living in very precarious times with wars in Israel. Israel's more wars than I believe we can count right now. What I can count is I know there's the Hezbollah. Up in the north, there's Hezbollah and Hamas. There's like two factions over there that I'm aware of. Down in Gaza, there's Hamas and PIJ. This is like Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Then you got this veiled threat coming from Jordan, that like Iranian proxies would be coming from Jordan. Then you got the Houthis down in Yemen, right? Those are the ones that I can count. I think that's 6 so far. And then you got like the shadow war that's coming from internet and hackers, and then there's something going on in what's erroneously called the West Bank. It's really Judea and Samaria, which is some other Hamas factions. Then you got anti-Semitism around the world. You got the Hamas of Harvard, Hamas of the Ivy League, basically, right? You got Hamas of the United Nations. These are all departments of Hamas, right? And they're all over the place, right? So what happens is we're living in times where I talk to people and I say, look, we need a miracle. And they look at me and they say, your buddy and Ivis yesterday, we were talking about it. He was miracles. And I'm like, you have to believe in miracles. Even Ben Gurion said in Israel, to be a realist, you've got to believe in miracles, right? So the first thing we learn about the Passover offering is that you have to eat the Passover offering to remind you that the miracles were real. That's the first thing that's going on over here by eating this Passover offering, is that you realize that, God does break the laws of nature in order to help us. Now, the basis of this mitzvah also derives from the principle that through the redemption, the Jewish people attained a level of royalty. This mitzvah is an expression of that same idea insofar as it is not honorable for noble princes and counselors of the world to scrape off the bones and to break them as dogs would. Princes don't break bones. Princesses, right? To act in such a way is befitting only to the poor amongst the people who are ravenous. Therefore, at the time of the Exodus, which was the commencement of our attaining the status of a treasured of all the nations and the kingdom of ministers and a holy people, as well as each and every year at that time on the night of the 15th of Passover, it is fitting for us to perform the types of activities wherein we display the lofty status to which we ascended at that time. So then when we came out of Egypt, we were God's chosen people, the treasured people. We were sons and daughters of kings. We were princes and princesses, right? Each and every year on Passover, we're not just reminiscing, we are re-experiencing that effort. We are re-experiencing that status of being princes and princesses every year on the 15th of Nisan, which is Passover night. Through the deeds. Oh, and here's the catch. And through the deeds and symbolism in which we engage with the purpose of expressing their royal status, this matter is implanted in our souls forever. You got that? And through the deeds and symbolism in which we engage, action, this is the soul wardrobe of action, with the purpose of expressing this royal status, this matter is implanted in our souls forever. What that means is that how you behave is who you become. And now, Chuck, we're beginning to discover a new depth in the seemingly benign and utterly uninspiring mitzvah of not breaking bones of the Paschal Lamb. So instead of looking this at a very superficial level, like God is very concerned about snapping a bone in my dinner, which seems so incredibly irrelevant, we're now gaining a deeper insight, realizing one second. There's a way in which aristocracy eats. Aristocracy eats in a certain way. And God wants you to eat like an aristocrat.
Don't be a schlemazel.
Don't be a schlump.
Right.
Don't be a schlump. Right? I think it's the difference between a schlump and a schlemazel. Very, very important difference.
But I like it.
Let me think. A schlemazel, he can't help himself. A schlemazel is a guy with two left hands. He can't help himself. He's the guy that broke the vase. Doesn't matter. Even before it broke, he's the guy that's going to break the vase. He can't help himself. Right?
The schlump is
The schlump is a zhlub.
a schlub.
He's a zhlub.
I got it.
He dresses like a zhlub. He looks like a zhlub. You know what a zhlub is?
Yeah.
You can't translate a zhlub.
No, that's right. You have to know a schlub.
Yeah. Oh, slob. That's where the word comes from. Very good, a slob. Don't be a slob. It's a mitzvah not to be a slob. And now suddenly you're like, whoa, 1 second. It's a mitzvah not to be a slob. Ooh.
Right.
Why would it be a mitzvah not to be a slob? Put away your stuff. Clean up after yourself. Your desk should be a place which is respectable. Your office, your car should be a place which is fit for royalty.
Burger can't be here today because
Yeah. You know, I want to tell you, when we hired an employee a while ago, I brought him into the show and I said to him, you see the jackets that are slouched over the chairs? He said, no. I said, that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. Our shul has got to be a place fit for royalty at all times. Nothing should be left lying around, right? We don't say, well, I'll be back later, so I'll just leave this here. No. At all times, we've got to be ready for royalty to walk in here. Because we treat our congregants like royalty, and we want them to know that at any time when they walk in here, it's always ready for them. As opposed to saying, well, it's okay, you can leave the children's pot yet till Tuesday, nobody's coming anyways. No, we don't do that. We're very meticulous to make sure that we have tablecloths on the table, that the place is as clean as it possibly can be, and thank God our team is amazing. But the idea here is, friends, is that the way you dress your soul, what's your soul? Thought, speech, and action is who you become. This is not just an idea. This is actually a mitzvah. The 613 commandments of the Torah. And what's so beautiful is that we took a mitzvah which seemed so incredibly irrelevant, benign. And suddenly it becomes, whoa, 1 second. You mean I have to dress like a mensch? That's the immediate implication. Physically, you have to dress like a prince. If you're going to walk around like a schlump, like a hooligan, like a beach bum, you're not dressed like royalty. And you have to get this into your head.
My wife is blown away by how spectacular the galas are.
Oh,
Just blown away. And the mitzvah.
So Jackie would definitely be a princess.
well, your wife is a princess. That's why she's so drawn to Chabad.
Yes.
Because here at Chabad, we take ourselves very seriously.
Yeah.
We take ourselves seriously. We're like, we dress like royalty. and we behave like royalty, and we entertain our guests like royalty because they are royalty. So your wife gets it. She's like, oh, finally, somebody's treating me like properly. And she comes to Chabad, she feels at home, right?
Well, she's the queen of the house.
There you go. She comes here and she feels like the queen of the castle.
Royal carriage, right?
So Chuck, are you okay with this idea? Can you connect to this idea? I try to read that piece one last time. Through the deeds and symbolism in which we engage with the purpose of expressing this royal status, this matter is implemented in our souls forever. Now I want to show you one more example. What was it? I want to move to a completely seemingly unrelated mitzvah. And that would be the mitzvah. What's those words up there? What was that? Hang on. What was that? Hang on, I think I'm finished. Hang on. Bear with me a moment. Here. Okay, here. We're never done. Sorry, here it is. Carries on. The mitzvah carries on. So now he continues. Do not think, my son. Remember, he wrote this for his son. In the introduction of this book, the Chinuch, he writes that he composed this work so as to be able to inspire the heart of the youth, my son, and the lads are his friends by learning it together with them weekly. It's the 613 mitzvahs organized according to the parsha of the week. Right? All explained. And it's in this set over here, the book of mitzvahs. Okay. He continues, do not think, my son, to challenge my words and say, what purpose is there in Hashem, blessed be he, commanding us to perform all these mitzvahs as a remembrance of that miracle of the Exodus? Why, with one remembrance alone, the matter of the miraculous Exodus can be brought to our attention. How many times do I need to remember the same thing? He's saying to his son, maybe you would think, how many times I need to remember the Exodus? We have 8 days a year that we remember Passover. That seems overly excessive already. Twice a day we remember the Exodus from Egypt when we say the Shema, the third paragraph of the Shema. We wear the tzitzis. There's all sorts of different reminders. There are reminders of the mitzvahs, there are reminders of the Exodus. Why so many reminders? So that it not be forgotten from our offspring, for it is not out of wisdom that you would challenge me on this. It's not out of wisdom. It's not a smart thing to ask such a question. And it is childish thinking that would influence you to speak in such a matter. To explain why it is in fact necessary that many mitzvahs be dedicated to memorialize the events of the Exodus, Chinuch now introduces a fundamental concept pertaining to the commandments of the Torah. We're doubling down in this idea. Now, my son, if you have understanding, listen to this and incline your ear and hear. I will instruct you for your benefit in Torah and mitzvahs. Know it to be true that man is affected in accordance with his actions. Man is affected in accordance with his actions, and his heart and thoughts constantly follow the deeds in which he is occupied, whether good or evil. This is a fundamental principle in Jewish spirituality, in human spirituality, in spirituality. Know this to be true. I'm repeating that a man is affected in accordance with his actions. V'liba in his heart, v'chol machshavaisav in his thoughts, tamid achar maisav shoysav ahem, flow constantly behind the deeds in which he's occupied, in tov and ra, whether they are good or whether they are bad. This is an unbelievable idea, guys. You want to change? Fake it. You want to become a better person? Dress the part. Whether that means the clothing of your body or the clothing of your soul. But either way, just grab a piece of clothing. Clothing of your body, we know what that is. That's easy to understand. That's physical wardrobe. Clothing of your soul, that's thought, speech, and action. This is a fundamental idea in Jewish spirituality. You want to become a better person? Then just act that way a few times. Think that way. And what does thinking mean? Thinking means focused thoughts. Now, this is an idea that a lot of people struggle to understand, but your thoughts are not by default. You are the master of your thoughts. It's a beautiful story, actually. A beautiful story of a chassid who came to the Rebbe. He came to, write myself a note here. A beautiful story of a chassid who came to his Rebbe. I think it was the Maggid of Mezrich, and he said, "How can I control my thoughts? What do you mean I can control my thoughts? How can I possibly control my thoughts? That's impossible." He said, "Go to a certain chassid of mine, and he will explain it to you." Long story short, the guy goes, he travels a long journey, he reaches that chassid across wherever he reached him. And he comes to him, it's very late at night, there's a blizzard going on. And he's relieved to see that the house of the Chassid, the light is on, it's still on, he's still awake. And he sees to the window, the guy's a few feet away, he's studying Torah. So he knocks on the window, he says, hello, I'm here. No answer. The guy's 3 feet away from him behind the window. And he's banging away, he's knocking on the door, it's freezing out here, let me in. And for hours, the guy keeps him outside. Eventually, the guy's, there's no choice, no nowhere to go. He's sitting on the doorstep, freezing in the blizzard. After a couple hours, the guy opens the door. Welcome, my guest. Where have you been? So good to see you. I'm so good. Come inside, warm yourself up. So the guy was like, could you let me in 3 hours ago? So he says, I'm the master of my house. Those who I wish to allow access to, I allow. And those who I wish to deny access to, I deny. I deny access to those I choose to whom to deny and allow access. That's what he said. And now the Chassid hears this, the traveler, and he says, oh, I think I just got the answer to my question. Because he realized that my mind is my palace. And I can choose to allow access or to deny access to whomever I wish. I don't need to allow myself to entertain any thought that crosses my mind. Just because the thought entered my mind, it doesn't mean that it has to stay in my mind. How can you control your thoughts? Chassidus teaches us that you can easily control your thoughts with a simple awareness that you can only think one thought at a time. Can you think of 2 thoughts at a time?
I sometimes think so, but
Let's see. I'd like you to think about a polar bear and about Michael Bloomberg's investment strategies for the next 5 seconds. Both. Do you think about both?
Polar bear one out.
It was right. You can't think about both. Your mind is a bottleneck. You can only think about one thought at a time. So if you don't want to think in certain thoughts, very simple. All you have to do is you have to make a decision. You have to have a reserve, an arsenal of thoughts that you want to think about. This is why it's important to study Torah. So you have Torah thoughts to think about. Because if you have an empty mind, you know what's going to happen in there? Nasty. It's going to get nasty. You know, it says by Joseph. It says by Joseph that he was thrown into the pit. Joseph was thrown. My mind is racing, so I have to write it down. Otherwise, it's going to go in.
2 thoughts at the same time. Though.
Yes, I was thinking when I was writing once. So Joseph was thrown into the pit. It says in the Torah that the pit was empty. It had no water. So the Gemara asked, what do you know? If it was empty, of course it had no water. If it was empty, why does the Torah need to tell me it doesn't have water? Of course it doesn't have water. You said it's empty. You said it's empty. The Torah doesn't say anything redundant. And says the Gemara didn't have water. But there's no such thing as a true vacuum in this world. There's no such thing as a truly empty something in this world. If it was empty, okay, it was empty of what? It was empty of water, but snakes and scorpions were there. It didn't have water, so it wasn't a drowning hazard, but it certainly was a different kind of hazard at snakes and scorpions. Because there's no such thing as an empty space. This is what Torah teaches.
The law of physics
Says.
Well, includes a vacuum, right?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No?
A true vacuum? Are you saying this because you know or because you're asking me?
I'm asking a question.
I believe that there's no such thing as a true vacuum. I don't know if science believes in a true vacuum either. I don't know enough about the topic to be able to answer your question if you're asking me a question. I don't know. But Chassidus teaches us, Torah teaches us that there's no such thing as a true vacuum, which is why when some of these transcendental meditations tell you to think about nothing, impossible. It's an exercise in futility. You'll end up thinking about the word that they're making you think, the mantra. You'll think about the nail on the wall. You'll think about the crack in the nail on the wall that you're staring at. But you're thinking about something. You cannot think about nothing.
No, even they say you can listen, your mantra, you can say it. And it'll last for about 3-4 seconds if you're not.
Just to explain it this way, to explain it in this context, Chassidus explains that you have garments, right? The soul's garments, thought, speech, and action. So action is the most external garment. It's like a coat. You don't have to wear a coat. You can take it off. You don't have to do action. Speech is like a shirt. You wear a shirt quite often, but you can take it off, right? That's speech. You don't have to talk all the time, but you can take it off if you want to. Thought is the most sensitive of the garments of the soul. It's the closest. It's like, think about it like in undergarments. This you should be wearing probably all the time. So, but in the case of the thoughts, you're thinking about it. Your thoughts are constantly in motion. You can never actually divest of your thoughts because you're always thinking, right? So this is what Chassidus teaches us. You cannot ever not be thinking. So if you're not thinking about something which you want to be thinking about, guess what's going to happen? That's when you're going to be thinking about something which you don't want to be thinking about. And if you're not having focused, mindful thinking, then you're going to have unfocused, mindless thinking, and all bets are off the table about where that's going to go. So the answer is yes, you can control your thoughts. The answer is yes, you can control your thoughts. You are able to think about what you want to think about, but you can never not be thinking. And that's, you can never not be thinking about something. And that's why it says by Joseph, the pit was empty, it had no water. To tell us that there's no such thing as a vacuum. It was empty of water, but it had snakes and scorpions. So if your mind is empty, don't think it's thinking of nothing. No, it's going to be thinking of snakes and scorpions. Unless you put in positivity, unless you put in illuminated thoughts, you'll be thinking about dark thoughts. So back to our idea here. How did we get into that? We were saying that you can control your thoughts, right? And I was going somewhere with that. I was saying that I'm trying to remember where my train of thought was. You remember? I was saying that
So man is affected by his actions. His hearts and thoughts will follow.
Right. So you got to focus on what your actions and what your speech and what your thought is. And I was saying you can't control your thought. You can. Right. Absolutely. Now, he continues. Chinuch continues. Even someone who is entirely wicked at heart, for whom every product of the thoughts of his heart is but evil always. People like this. If his spirit were to be aroused and he were to diligently place his efforts and activity in the study of Torah and in the performance of mitzvahs, what's going to happen to this guy? Take a bandit, a hooligan, and he gets inspired somehow to put his efforts and activity in the study of Torah and the performance of mitzvahs, even if not for the sake of heaven, even if he does it for the wrong reasons. The result would be that he would immediately turn toward the good path. If he were to continue on that path, through the strength of his deeds, listen to these words, through the strength of his deeds, he would eventually slay the evil inclination within himself. This is because the hearts of men are drawn after their actions. And that is the crux of it. Because the hearts of men are drawn after their actions. You become how you dress. You need to figure out who you want to be like. This is why I said this before. This is why Tony Robbins says you got a role model. You got to think of who you want to be like and just act like them. Just act like them. Speak like them, act like them, and you become like them. In a tragic twist of this, there's one of the leaders of the Houthis in Yemen. They were doing some psychological analysis. Every time that Nasrallah, may his name be blotted out and erased, and Nasrallah from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, every time he gives a speech, this guy gives a speech. And whatever he says, the other guy says. The guy literally models him. He's like this little schnook terrorist, and he's copying the big fish terrorist, but he's clearly role modeling after him. I guess the internet signal from Lebanon doesn't reach whatever in Yemen. So this guy, he just copies whatever that guy was saying. He's trying to model after him, right? And this is such a beautiful idea that because the hearts of men are drawn after their actions. The hearts of men are drawn after their actions. Think about your investment. I find when it comes to our shul here, people come in, they're not emotionally invested in our congregation, in our shul. They'll come in, they'll start complaining. Why is there no minyan? The kiddush, this is too salty, this is too long, this is too short. Then what I do is I ask them to become a member. Join the congregation. And what's amazing is the moment they join the congregation, all the complaints go away. Because now they feel emotionally invested in the congregation. They feel a sense of ownership. And now instead of them coming to complain about someone else's problem, they're like, this is my house. They feel like it's my house as I'm a member here. And now after their investment, they feel connected. Their hearts actually tangibly follow their dollars. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to see, and you can find that in your other investments as well. You know, where you choose to invest in the stock market or something else. That's where you become invested. Is this true, Dan? You're an investment person, right?
Yeah.
So do you find that when you invest in a certain kind of stock and you start to believe in, I don't know, global warming or something, like you start to,
It could happen. I
right?
can see that.
Okay. So he carries on. Even if a person is entirely righteous and his heart is straight and perfect, desirous of Torah mitzvahs, even such a person could be led astray by way of his negative actions. This is true the other way as well, right? If you were to constantly engage in false conduct, you may say by way of example that the king coerced him and appointed him to a wicked trade, let's say. Let's say it's a good person that was put into a position of a nasty position, a job, right? Then, in truth, if all of his activity constantly and all day was in that evil trade, with passing of time, he would eventually retreat from the righteousness of his heart to become an entirely wicked individual. For the matter is known and true that every man is affected in accordance with his actions, as we have stated. Therefore, based on an idea that a person is influenced by his actions, as sages of blessed memory have stated, the Holy One, blessed be He, desired to confer merit upon Israel. Therefore, He gave them Torah and mitzvahs in abundance. We study this mission every single day at the end of our davening. This is the mission that we say that God Almighty wanted to confer merit upon Israel. Therefore, He gave them Torah and mitzvahs in abundance. That is to say, He gave us an abundance of Torah and mitzvahs to preoccupy all of our thoughts through them. He gave us a lot of good stuff to think about and engage in, and that all of our activities should be focused on fulfilling them, so as to bestow goodness upon us in our ultimate end. For through the good actions in which we engage, we are affected to become good, and we thereby merit eternal life. Our sages of blessed memory have alluded to this when they stated, anyone who has a mezuzah in his doorway, tzitzis on his garment, and tefillin on his head, assuredly will not sin. This is because these are constant mitzvahs. What that means is you have a mezuzah constantly on the door, you have the tzitzis dressed on you, tefillin on you all the time, and he's affected by them constantly. It's not just that he's going to get like some sort of spiritual merit somewhere. It means that you're actively engaged, and therefore you're going to change. Now here's practical advice. Therefore, you should indeed look carefully at what your occupation and activities are in terms of their spiritual effect. You have to reinterpret your retirement right now, for example. Folks, if you're retired, I want you to think about I'm going to get your comments, guys, in a moment. Looks like they're coming in fast and furious. So I just want to say, you got to reinterpret your retirement. What do you actually do in your retirement? And if you're not retired, then what do you do for a living, right? I want you to think about this. What do you do in your free time? What is your primary main occupation in your free time? Is it selfish oriented? Is it selfless oriented? Is it something which is kind? Is it something which is mean? Is it something which is benign? Right? You know, some people, their whole occupation is about forwarding bad news emails. That's their whole life. It's about finding the bad news, the latest anti-Semite, and sharing it with the whole world. Right? Think about it. You're just engaging in hate. If you think about that, I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing to do, but think about what you're doing. You're seeking out hate, and you love to discover hate. You hate to discover, you love to discover. Different ways to look at it, but think about it. You engage in hate. Think about that. So he says over here, therefore you should look carefully at what your occupation activities are in terms of their spiritual effect. For you will be drawn after them, but you will not draw them. For you will be drawn after them, but you will not draw them. Your actions will pull you. You will not pull your actions. Your actions will control you. You will not change your actions. That is, your nature will not overcome your actions. Rather, your actions will influence your nature. Do not allow your evil inclination to assure you by telling you the following: since my heart is complete and perfect in belief in God, what loss is there if occupying myself occasionally to enjoy the pleasures that life has to offer mankind, such as to loiter in the markets and streets, to mock with scoffers, and to speak with unrestrained wit? Let me once in a while just say whatever I want to say. And other such matters for which one would not be required to bring a guilt or sin offering for having done them. These are benign actions. They're not sinful per se. And as far as the concern that I will be drawn after the scoffers, I will counter, why, I also have a heart like that. My little finger, I have a heart also. My little finger is thicker than their loins. This is a quote from the Bible. I'm more strong-willed than they. Why would I be drawn after them? Don't kid yourself, says the chinuch to his son. Don't kid yourself that you're not going to be drawn after them. Chinuch warns of the results of such reckless overconfidence. No, my son, be wary of such company, lest you be ensnared in their net. Many have drunk based on this logic from the cup of their poison and suffered accordingly. But as for you, do not do so. Rather, save your soul. And now we can finally answer our question: why so many mitzvahs serve specifically as a remembrance of the miraculous Exodus from Egypt. Why do we need so many reminders? After you know this principle, it will no longer trouble you. Why there is an abundance of mitzvahs with which to regard, to recall the miracles performed for us by God in Egypt. These mitzvahs are a great pillar of our Torah because by engaging in these mitzvahs extensively, we will be influenced toward the matter that they are intended to bring us to recall, as we have stated above. In other words, instead of the miracles of Exodus being something that you simply cerebrally recall, it will be something that you actively feel. You will feel the miracles. You'll feel connected to the Almighty God, and that's going to be having a far greater effect on you because of the abundance of the memorial mitzvahs around you. Just to finish this detail here about the mitzvah, the laws of this mitzvah include, for example, what the law is with regard to one who breaks a bone off of the Pesach offering, even after the time it is to be eaten. They include also the matter of what the law is regarding a bone that has an olive's volume of meat upon it, and the law regarding cartilage and soft sinews that will eventually harden. These laws and additional details of the law are elaborated in the Gemara and Tractate Pesachim. The mitzvah is applicable to both men and women in the times of the Holy Temple alone. One who transgresses this prohibition and breaks the bone of the Pesach is of a pure Passover offering, incurs lashes. Now, with that, I'm going to finish, guys, but I'm going to say what an amazing experience that was. We took a mitzvah that seemed so insanely irrelevant to our lives, and suddenly it became incredibly impactful. Because you are royalty, why don't you start acting like it? Why don't you start thinking like it? Why don't you start speaking like you are royalty, and it will change your life. You will begin to feel like royalty, and soon, I don't know if your grandfather ever said this to you. You ever heard of these words? Es passt nicht. You ever heard those words? Es passt nicht in Yiddish. Es passt nicht for dir. Oh, never. So two kids come home from school with bad report marks, right? Reports. So one comes home and his father says, how could you? This is a disgrace. You're an embarrassment, he says to them. You're an embarrassment. Another father says to him, es passt nicht. It's not fitting for you. It's not fitting for you. It's like, seriously? You, my son? To get a D minus? Like, really? So the first one,
He's saying you're better than this.
the first one doubles down about how bad you are. And the other one is saying how high you are. You're so much better than this. It's pasnish. It's not appropriate for you. It's katana lecha. It's small on you to get such a result. Let's just get the comments coming in. If Stephen says you're so right about investment, sometimes I even have trouble selling a stock because of an emotional attachment to it. I'm going to apply this to my spiritual life. Stephen, I love that. Winston, Reuben reasoned that Joseph's chances were better with the snakes and scorpions, which do not possess free choice, and therefore would not be able to kill him if he did not deserve it. Interesting insight there. And indeed, the snakes and scorpions did not harm Joseph. Still, Joseph pleaded with them to remove him from the pit. They ignored his pleas. Okay, you're quoting for the Kos Chumash. All right, fine. Today is Dan Geiker's English birthday, March 12th, says Winston. Ooh, nice. Winston's good. And yep, today's Torah study, of course, is sponsored in honor of Stephanie Marmer's birthday for many long, healthy, and happy years. Folks, I'm going to end it over here, but we are on a journey, guys. We're on a journey. We're becoming better people. We're tying it all together. We're becoming the best versions of ourselves. How are we going to do that? We're going to go from the outside in. This is counterintuitive. It's retro engineering, but this is what it says in the user's manual. If you don't believe me, it's in the 613 commandments of the Torah. By the way, today I just did one of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. This is not an explanation of one mitzvah. It's a principle. It's a founding principle of Torah, which impacts the understanding of so many other mitzvahs. It's such a tragedy. People say to me, well, we don't do Purim anymore because the kids are all grown up and we don't need to do the kindergarten masquerade thing anymore. And I feel so bad for these people. Is your spirituality just about kindergarten masquerades? Is your Passover, is your Shabbos about a Hebrew school, adolescent experience? Is that what your Judaism is? Your spirituality is an adolescent experience? How about you make it a mature experience? The novelty of our sages is that they made Yiddishkeit relevant even to the children. But if your Yiddishkeit is relevant only to the children, you need to go back to the drawing boards. You need to chat with your rabbi, guys. Okay, folks, I'm going to wrap it up over here. Have a lovely day. Mazel tov to you, Stephanie. Thank you for sponsoring today's Torah study. And let's make sure that today we're mindful of our garments. Have a great day.
So the story about the farmhouse?